Bonsoir à tous. Merci d'être présents pour cette conférence de Point Suprême. Je vais introduire juste quelques mots en français, mais après on va switcher en anglais. Merci d'être là, malgré cette semaine de barbecue et de festivités à l'école. On accueille Point Suprême, qui nous vient d'Athènes. Qui est un studio qui s'est créé en 2008, il me semble, à Rotterdam. Mais vous allez nous en dire plus. Qui a œuvré dans pas mal de pays, que nous, on connaît depuis très longtemps. En fait, cette invitation, elle vient du partenariat qu'on a monté il y a 3 ans avec Fabienne Boudon ici, et l'école d'Athènes et Politecnico di Milano. Et donc, depuis 3 ans, on a un financement Erasmus qui nous permet, à nous et aux étudiants, d'aller faire des workshops sur le bassin méditerranéen et d'inviter aussi des gens extérieurs qui viennent d'un peu plus loin que d'habitude. Voilà, ce qui est plutôt intéressant et ce qui nous excite pas mal. Voilà. On travaille sur l'est du bassin méditerranéen pour un peu 2 raisons. On travaille sur les modernités abandonnées, voilà, plutôt des gros objets modernes qui n'ont plus trop lieu d'être, et on essaie de comprendre pourquoi est-ce qu'ils sont comme ça et quel est leur rapport à la ville, au tourisme, et aussi d'une autre manière à leur capacité d'adaptation ou non à une architecture peut-être plus vernaculaire qu'on entend plus quand on parle de l'Est méditerranéen. Le deuxième point qui nous intéresse sur ces territoires et aussi sur le travail de Point Suprême, c'est aussi le travail un peu précis sur qu'est-ce que c'est que l'architecture, alors là notamment grecque, athénienne, contemporaine, et en quoi est-ce que elle offre d'une certaine manière une réponse, en tout cas un travail sur qu'est-ce que c'est que l'architecture contemporaine face au changement climatique, face aux enjeux contemporains que on vit tous, et peut-être où il y a eu un besoin d'adaptation peut-être plus précoce dans ces latitudes-là. Voilà. Donc voilà le pourquoi de cette invitation. Je vais vous laisser la parole. Et merci. Et après, on fera le tour des questions, mais par contre, on les fera en anglais. Merci. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you, Julien. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's really a pleasure to be here today and to see your school and to present our work to you in this environment, because we think that there's a lot of similarities and common points that you will maybe notice also during the talk between this place and the place where we operate, Athens, and the type of work that we do. I'll start with a small introduction about our city, our place, our context, Athens. Athens, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. It's a very special place. It has the luck to be surrounded by sea on 3 sides and then by a mountain on one side, roughly on the north. So it has a certain particularity, it has a certain beauty already by that. But then if you see the actual city, the way that it has been built, it looks like this. It's made of the same building type, the multi-residence building. We call it polykatikia, multi-residence it means, and it's a very universal application of this type with very few exceptions. It's basically the domino system realization in a gigantic scale. So it's a very particular situation because it's a city made mostly by engineers, by civil engineers, without the need for architects, or architects were not involved in the process of making the city. So the city is largely, or one can say it's largely a very big framework. It's a frame, it's a system that holds program. That is already something that makes me think of the architecture of this school where we are. It's a frame that holds program, but to us it also links to the ancient Greek architecture of the temple, which was also a frame for something, a frame situated into the landscape, maybe a frame to the landscape. So this frame had certain qualities, certain particularities, because it was not a closed object. It was not an object referring to itself. In fact, in Greece, it's very common to have to see things like this, to have objects like this, which are semi-finished systems, like frames, that have been inhabited or programmed partially, so part of them remain empty, unprogrammed, unfinished, which means that Greek people have been very accustomed to certain ideas, for example, the unfinished, the unorthodox, the random, the phasing, for example, of things. Architecture is not an object, is not a specific form, is not something that is necessarily finished or has a form. On the other hand, we think, if we think of Athens, we think that it has peculiar beauty and the form, which is largely thanks to other things, not the architecture of it. It's something that we often think this painting of Spiros Vassiliou summarizes very well, because we see here a portrait of Athens that is made of its most important elements or layers. You see in the foreground, you see an outdoor space with a couch. It's a veranda or a roof terrace. Then, of course, you have a layer of 6 floors of frame, of pilotis, of polykatikias, dominoes. But then you have always nature in the back, in the form of the mountain in this case, and then also a blue sky on top with an omnipresent sun, a sun that's always there. So Athens is made of all these things, not just the building typology of the domino, so it gets a particular form and beauty. There's other things also that we always found very particular and critically important in Athens, which fulfill the frame, and these are some ideas that have to do with what we call Greekness, about being Greek, about being in Greece. It's the idea of togetherness, festivity, and symbolism. So these frames, the reason they were made like this is because actually it's not so important the indoor space. In the life of the country, because of the very good climate, it's actually more important what happens outside, and life really happens outside. So you have these social spaces, you have everywhere occasions where people just hang out and are together, and there's many occasions and moments where Greek life becomes collective, becomes celebrated together. There's things like, of course, there's the holidays and the national days, but there's also name days, for example. There's different moments where Greek people come together, and this is something that the frame basically serves. And this is something we very much enjoy noticing. If we look at the city, you see that the facade of the city, the image of the city, is made of its outside spaces, particularly the balconies, because all these frames, all these domino buildings, the polykatikias, have balconies around, which get animated by people. So they have sunshades, they have pots, they have outdoor furniture, and they hang out there. So the image of the city becomes the image of its people, and that's very particular, and that's very beautiful, because it's still Athens is still a city that is made of its people, so it has a human scale. It's something we sometimes also see in art, like in this painting. And of course, there are some different cases. There are other architectures of different times, like the neoclassical architecture that had a form, had color, was finished, was made in one instance. So there is also this kind of beauty that also, of course, becomes part of the city and the beauty, the atmosphere of it. But more common is this kind of sites. So things where the result is the accumulation of different moments in time, of decisions made by non-architects, you know, of the building, the builder or the resident that just fixes the frame in a way to serve his program, and you see this kind of crazy, surreal strange situations or results, with stairs floating in the void, and, well, as you see, very interesting results. It's a very common sight. It's something that we keep discovering and observing and enjoying. Also, little buildings on buildings. Or this is a very historical and known taverna, so eatery in the center, where you see it's very unorthodox. The counter is on top, is on the stair, but also the door is halfway dug. It's a semi-basement, so you walk and you actually hit on the counter. So it's things that by conventional architectural standards are mistakes. But in our country, they're not considered to be mistakes, or we don't see them as mistakes. We see them as the result of some kind of spontaneous ingenuity, flexibility of people really designing the space around them and their needs in a way that is ingenious, economical, very functional, and in the end, poetic. So we keep, as Point Supreme, we keep observing and looking for this kind of moments, this kind of places in Greece. They're everywhere, in the islands, in the countryside, in the city also, and we have a collection of them that we always study and take inspiration from, which gets combined with, of course, international also references, or sometimes eponymous ones. So our reference made by architects. I don't see one here. So two examples, for example, are these. To the left is a church on Limnos Island. I think it's considered the world's biggest roofless church. So it's a church that's built in a cave, so it didn't need a roof, because actually the cave protects it from rain. And to the right is a typical Cycladian island interior, which we see as a house inside a house, or an architecture inside an architecture. It's two of the examples that we often reflect in our projects. Or this picture we find very important to show our thinking. It's an image of a typical Greek Orthodox celebration. It's the baptism of Christ, where, as you see, it's a very magical moment. It's a very magical space to us, and it's a space without architecture. So architecture is really a background. It's very basic. I mean, when I say architecture, I mean architecture made by architects. So it's a scene made, an event made with a simple platform and a little fisherman's boat. But everything is there. Everything is included in the scene. There's form, there's color, there's symbolism, there's ornamentation, and also there's nature, there's landscape, there's horizon, there's depth of vision. So it's a very architectural scene we find. I think it's something that we try to recreate in our own work. So starting with our office, this was a short introduction about where we are based and what our city means to us. Going towards our actual office, we'll start with a small chapter about the beginning phase. So I think Julien mentioned we founded our office Point Supreme in 2008, which coincidentally was the time of the financial crisis in Greece. And we came to Athens from abroad to open our office because we were pretty much obsessed with Greece at the time. After having lived abroad for a while, we started to have ideas and fascinations and imaginations about the city. So in a way, we started to look at Athens while being abroad as a city full of potential, but without a manifesto, without any a specific vision about it. So we started to do projects, self-commissioned projects, which just started to do work without being asked by anyone to do it about the city, addressing different topics. The first one we did was this. It was called 100 Polykatikias, and it was a research design project looking at the type, the module, the domino that we showed you in the photographs earlier, and trying to test its limits of form and introduction of program. So we made these, let's say, icons inspired by the time we were working at OMA just before, where we treated this typology, which used to be just frame, just structure, just infrastructure, to try to see what the limits of inserting form and program to it would be.
Okay, so as Konstantinos said, we were in Rotterdam for many years, working for OMA, MVRDV, and this kind of offices, mainly for big-scale projects. And when we came back to Greece, we were very much influenced by all this metropolitan issue, and we had this need to understand our city in a bigger scale and to understand what Athens is from bird's-eye view. So one of the other projects, the first project was Polykatikia, and the other one was called Athens Heaven. In this project, we calculated how much green space is missing from the center of Athens, and we compared it to the European average size. And we ended up that is missing 6,000 square meters, which is the first shape. And with this calculation, we also tried to solve another project to connect another problem, which was to connect the Acropolis to the sea. That was a relationship that Athens used to have, but now it's lost. So we created this big park between Acropolis and the seaside. And this project is called Athens Heaven. It was a very interesting moment of the office because a lot of people related to these projects, and actually some citizens came and they said, okay, maybe we should try to make it and be in contact with this, with the mayor, etc. Another project that was also deal with Athens as a whole is the theater square. This is an urban void in the center of Athens. What is interesting in this project is that it dealt in many different scales. I think it is one of the first projects that actually marry our need to give an icon to the city, but also dealt also with the human scale. As you can see in this diagram, we use nature as architecture, as the icons, so you could see the palm trees from far away. But at the same time, we treated the ground floor with a lot of sensitivity to give a very sensual and intense spatial experience. This is the space as it's now. And this is our proposal. So we created this very dense space, but actually only out of nature. The plan that you can see that we treated nature as a building, but again with a lot of detailing where the people were entering, where are the big palm trees that you can see from far away. The sketches that we were doing during the competition. These are, we always start with a sketch and then we ended up with a collage that has more precision. And this is the view, how you enter to this square. Athens by hills. Again, another project that dealt with the city as a whole. In this project, we wanted to show that Athens is not only Acropolis, because people only know Athens from the Acropolis hill, but actually it's a network of hills. And then we try to reveal the genius loci of every hill and propose specific programs according to what is already there. And then we were using postcards from our collection. Actually, we believe that postcards reveal the collective subconscious. And in this postcard, you can see the relationship that Lycabettus Hill has with Acropolis. And again, we were inspired by projects from OMA. This is a sketch that we did about the relationship of Lycabettus Hill and Acropolis with their kid Polykatikia, based on a painting by Madelon Brisentorp that she did for an OMA project in Delirious, New York. And then we also create this postcard where we put Athens. Where we added Athens hills in a network of very famous hills to show this relationship. And then another project that we did and had a lot of people were very related to this project was Athens as an island, when we wanted to show that Athens actually looks like a capital of the typical island in Aegean Sea. So we replaced the Polykatikias with these white dense houses that you see in the Greek islands, and we wanted to show that actually Athens is a part of the archipelago network. And that was a very interesting project because a lot of people, they were using this project when they were leaving to go on holidays. They were saying, I'm coming back to Athens in September. And then we even did a tourist campaign that it's called Only in Athens. This is the logo of this campaign, where we created this metope, mainly from the elements that Athens has, which is the Polykatikia, the ancient columns, the Byzantine churches, the umbrella for the beach, and the small kiosks. And we created a series of posters and products, and even T-shirts based on this campaign. And so the project that we saw so far had mainly to do with Athens as a whole, but slowly we were diving into more specific contextual projects in smaller urban context. This is Athens by Pool, where we found these existing recesses in the city, in the center of Athens, and we proposed to fill it up with water. What is interesting in this period, let's say, of our office, is that actually all the proposals were very realistic, and the design actually came only by observing very carefully what was around the space. And this is the square in front of the city hall in Athens, which is very dry and very unfriendly, people with no shade, very formal also, very hard. What we propose is to make it into a very big green space with a lot of water sprinkles, and to turn it into a playful and very pleasant place for the citizens. And one very important project that we did, which is called Pier, and actually it was we won. It was the first prize of an open competition. The competition asked for an architectural icon in front of this pier that actually is in front of the Rentzou piano building in Athens. So the competition asked for a restaurant that has a more iconic form on top of this pier. What we did is that we didn't create an icon, but we used an existing icon of Greece, this ferry. Actually, that was the starting point of our proposal. And we turned this pier into a taxi and a water taxi, and that could take the people from there and carry them to all the beaches of Athens. In this way, we extended the brief and we tried to activate the whole coastline of Athens by using this small pier that the competition gave to us. And also what is interesting that actually what we propose, the architecture that we propose is very simple, very archetypical, and actually it's very dense as a program because it combined a canopy with a shade that it's very needed in Greece, a tribune that creates this relationship with the sea and the ferry, And on top there was this the restaurant, and underneath was the place where people could buy the ticket and go around the city of Athens.
It was very Lacaton Vassal, I'm thinking now, because we doubled the program. Because you would normally have to pay a ticket, you would have to pay to use the restaurant. So you would have to walk in the sun, in the heat, and arrive to this end of the pier, and then you would have to buy something to be in this icon they imagined. So we said, let's lift the restaurant one floor up, so whoever wants to pay goes there, but then for the rest of the public, of the people, they can stay on the ground for free.
Mm-hmm. So all this is the view from the ferry towards the pier. And a series of Athens projects that they were presented in Athens Biennale in Venice Biennale 2012. And what is interesting in this project is that it has an image of the urban proposal that we proposed, but also a detail of the project, combining again the big scale of the city, but also with a detail that it's more referring to the human scale. This project is Athens Heaven, a theater square that we saw you before.
So this was a series of examples from the urban projects we did in the beginning period of the office. But simultaneously, we started to have some commissioned work, some real work as well. What is interesting, and we'll try to show you, is how the urban projects actually influenced the built work that we did, which is something that happened unconsciously, and we only realized much later. So the first project we were asked to build, was actually the renovation of a small flower shop. It was about 25 square meters. And it had no budget, so there was no money to do it. So imagine us having returned from Rotterdam, working in the big offices and doing really ambitious big projects and urbanism, coming back to Greece, opening an office and being asked to renovate a flower shop without money. Still, we embraced the commission with real excitement and optimism and enthusiasm. And what happened is that we treat this commission, this brief, as an urbanism brief. So what we did was to create a small city inside the shop, in the center of the shop. We imagined little buildings that the clients, the owners of the flower shop, would be able to rearrange and create different cityscapes, like Manhattan. So it was very interesting because it reflected the very ambitious radical projects of Superstudio, for example, the Supersurface, etc. But also it became a mirror project to a lot of the urban projects that Marianna, and the urban thinking that Marianna was just showing, which reflected on the relationship between artifice and nature, or city and nature. Because in this project what we did was to create a city that would hold nature, which is a bit what we were trying to do also in Athens, in the Athens projects. Specifically, what happened is that the buildings we made, the tables we made, it was basically tables, white tables, made of these square tiles. So the whole space became something like a ruler, a measuring device, an optic device, thanks to which you could appreciate and understand the beauty and the differences between the different flowers and plants in the shop. And it really did work. So as soon as the space was made, also there was this blurry image of nature printed all around. So we designed a wallpaper for it. So your eyes would get used to the blurry image of the jungle, and then they would see this 10 centimeters lines everywhere. And so you could really appreciate the different flowers. It's something that we realized, also discussing about this lecture, preparing about this lecture for today, we realized much later that this is a key project that formed perhaps the way we worked afterwards. Am I going backwards? Okay, yes. Sorry. So we also used different types of representation to communicate the project also for us. We added various mythological and other references to it. So that's a one key project, the first key project we realized, and this is the other one that I think is a key project, is an interior renovation we did in 2015. It's called Nadia Apartment. This was a different case from the flower shop because it was bigger, it was 2 floors. That somebody bought in Athens in a polykatekia, in a typical building. Most of our work, I think, is in polykatekias. So somebody bought 2 floors and asked us to make them into a house for a family with 3 children and a cat. And so one thing that had to be done is to suddenly to have a connection between the 2 floors, to open a hole and have an internal stair. What happened in this project is that influenced by the Athens projects, it was imagined as not as a house, but as an environment. So the furniture, it's the first sketch that we showed you, the furniture and all the programs, all the functions of the house were imagined as little islands, little universes, little areas, like an archipelago of functions through which the family could, move. So that basically the social aspect of the house, as in the city, where the city is about living together, in the same way this house promotes being together. So instead of walls, it has different types of filters and divisions and partitions that are more nuanced, more subtle, more dynamic and more flexible. So there was a lot of mobile things so that the family could maybe more live together and have a feeling of being together, and then when necessary divide. So these are images from the lower level of the 2, which was designed as a kind of subterranean or water sea situation, like Athens by Islands or Athens by Hills that you saw earlier. This is an image of the entrance, while the upper floor was the opposite, was kind of an earth situation, more organic in colors and forms. And while doing this project, in order to be able to control and to design the relationships of the different functions, the different programs, the different elements, we were trying different types of representation in order to be able to grasp it. So we were doing catalogs, for example. Every object had its own references, its own time, its own history. It was a very inclusive process. So that was the second key project, and after this I'm going to show you 2 projects also realized, which are let's say maybe the most radical or 2 of the most extreme cases. It's 2 houses that also summarize well, I think, a lot of the things that are happening in our work. There are 2 very problematic briefs, 2 very difficult cases. The first one is a basement, so it's a space under the earth, and the second one is a rooftop, so it's a space above the city in a polykatekia. We'll start with the basement. This is Iliopoli apartment. The problem with this space, which was like this in the beginning, is that it's a space under the street level and it only has light on one side. So we were asked, so this was a storage, always it was left like this from the time that the polykatekia was built. It was just a basement. And one day the owners decided to try to use this and to make it into a house, and they asked us to do that. When we visited this space, we were really charmed by its feeling, because being underground and having light only on one side, it means that it was also very cool in temperature. So it was summer when we visited, it was really hot outside, and then you went down a stair, you entered this space, and suddenly it was like being in a cave. It was really like cold. So we were really charmed by this, and we decided to try to preserve this feeling of being in a cave. This is the plan. It's 55 square meters. It's pretty small. So this is the side of the light. with a small veranda. And what happened is that we decided to put absolutely no walls, so that no space would be without natural light. So the only wall that exists is the bathroom wall, which is pushed to the back, and everything else is in continuity. And is closing with mobile things, invisible or visible. And what was also interesting is that we brought a part of the outside in the house, so we made a little garden-like space in the beginning of the space, which makes you turn. So as soon as you came there, you had to turn, you put off your shoes and leave your coat, your jacket and your bag, and then you enter, and then you have to turn again to come to the kitchen. So the result is that the space became much bigger in experience because it took more time to circulate. This is the wall of the bathroom, which was shorter, again, for natural light. And the second very radical project is this one, is the one that I told you is on top of a polykatekia. It's the rooftop. It's called Ignatiu apartment. It's from last year, so it's more recent. Now, the difficulty with this one is the size of it. It was 22 square meters, so basically it's a room. It's this is the situation that we saw when we visited it. It's 4 columns and a roof, abandoned as well, like the basement, so never materialized. It's on top of a polykatekia in the center of Athens. It measures roughly 5 by 4 meters, and 3 people bought it, and they wanted to make a house for it. So it's a couple and their good friend, and they are based in Paris, here in France. And they bought this as a, well, during the COVID, the quarantines, they decided they really wanted to have a space in Athens, so in case of more quarantines, they could maybe go there to spend time. And because it's so small, like I said, it's basically a room, they imagined that they would not be able to stay in it all at once, so that either the couple would come or the guy with his friend would come. But we thought, despite the fact that it sounded a bit impossible, we thought that it's really a pity if these friends, very good friends, are not able to sleep all at once at the house. So instead of doing the obvious thing, which would be to try to keep it as empty as possible so that the size would feel bigger, we did the opposite. This is the space. This is the 4 by 5 meters interior space, and this is the elevator and stairs. So this is just the core of the building. You see, this is the room. What we did was divided in 5 rooms. We moved the door from the edge to the middle. So you enter here, and then you have a kitchen to the left and more kitchen to the right. You have a bathroom in the back, and then you have a bedroom and a living room with a couch that will open up to create a double bed. So 2 people can sleep there and 2 people can sleep there. And there was also a corridor left in the middle to access the back balcony, which was there. Another trick was that there were a lot of tricks, but one trick is that there's a veranda in the front where the picture was made from in the beginning. So we made the interior look like it floats outside. And to do that, there were a few different strategies. So this is the result. One strategy is that the floor extended outside. Another strategy is that the limits between the inside-outside were eliminated, deleted. So there is a big glass here, which we made to pull far away and park it, hide it in front of the elevator, outside the house. And then there were different types of opening windows from inside to outside. This is again the catalog of elements that made the project. Some images. So this was the render from the veranda looking back and the realization. So this was a little bit like a piece of furniture, we call it, a piece of furniture in the scale of architecture. It's a little bit the same situation we saw with the urban projects and what we were saying, the infiltration of the urban thinking into the architectural work, where what happened is that there was absolutely no respect for scale in our work. So this was, although it's a very small project, it was designed really precisely as something much bigger. Different views again, looking towards the entrance. Yes, so another trick that we did was to build a facade for the veranda. So we added these columns and we added a built-in bench all around with storage, a bit typical of the Greek islands, so that visually, especially since the glass here has disappeared, visually you feel that the interior stops at the columns, which is not true, but functionally, in function, it really does. Because the climate is always good, so the door is always open. So this was the second, maybe very radical project, I think. This is the entrance to this apartment, Ignatiu. And maybe to finish with these small examples of projects, a sketch from a moment that we were trying to trace the different interiors and the different urban rooms we had designed in the city at the time, because all of them were a bit different pieces in the same family of exceptions of form and program in a city that's otherwise universally very much homogeneous, the same. So this is the city, this is the city frame, the domino system, and then these are the different things that we had designed, like the palm trees square that Marianna showed, 6 dogs. This is the city hall square with the water sprinkles. This was the square pool, a ferry boat we once suggested to place on top of the rooftops, and different apartments that, well, we didn't show today.
Yeah, I wanted to say that the previous building, this one, Ignatiu, first, because it was the COVID period, first we designed it, and then we visited. So when we entered and we opened the door and we said, okay, this is it. I'm trying to show you how big it is, 4 by 5, to understand what this plan means. I don't know if you can, I think maybe it's something like, I don't know, this space, even less.
Yeah, it's a bit like...
yes, and...
it's a bit like this.
Maybe, I don't know. It's very interesting also in this apartment, also in the previous one, how important for us is the moment of the entrance. We always give a very generous and we always define the entrance. It doesn't matter how small the space is. And we always try to put windows and openings to places where your eye can go as far as possible, giving this connection to the city, but also to feel that you are in a bigger space than you are. For example, where we place the window, it's very strategic moments for us, very important to all of our projects. This project was also nominated for Miss Awards this year. It's 22 square meters, but it was quite radical. And this is Petralona House, which is actually our house. It's in the center of Athens, in a very dense neighborhood, but also in a very old school neighborhood at the same time. This is the house when we bought it. It's very, all the buildings are very close to it. And this is the first sketch that we did. Actually, we wanted to treat the house not as a house, but actually as a neighborhood, that it's a collection of different spatial experiences and different rooms, and with the center courtyard and center garden, as we call it. And this is the plan of the ground floor. We decided to keep the outline of the existing house that has this kind of very weird pixelated shape. Yeah, for us, the plan, this plan was very interesting because it creates, very narrow moments, but very open moments, and then you can go around the building. And actually, the ground floor we designed it as a part of the existing garden, so you cannot understand where the house stops and where the garden starts. As in all of our projects, we treat a lot the materials of the floor with a lot of detail and a lot of sensitivity. We think that it's the moment that you really are in contact with, let's say, with the material, the main material of the house. And this is a sketch of how our son, our kids, and the kids that are coming very often are using the house. And we think that it's mostly this kind of use of the space is mostly coming of the richness of materials that this house has. For example, the entrance where the carpet is, it's the wild nature that he tries to cut. And then it's the stone, which is the earth. And then the green tile is the sea that he dives in. And then this is the wood, the wooden, the tatami room, as we call it. And for him is the beach, and he takes out his shoes here. And then we have some movable tables. For him are the boats that he goes around, blah, blah, etc. These are all the floors of the house. The green one is the ground floor. The first floor and the second floor. Each floor has its own atmosphere. The ground floor is mainly related to the garden. It has these greenish colors. The first floor is very dense, and it's mostly referred to Greek island architecture. It has a lot of small scale, while the upper floor is more connected to the sky, the sunset, and it has more minimal, more villa-like coming from above, landed on the rest of the floors. And these are the collages that we used as studies. It's not the final result. When we were doing the project, we were doing this kind of collage. And what is interesting here is that architecture and furniture and ornamentation are all designed from the beginning together. This is the concrete wall, and here you can see the void, the two floors void of the house. The house from the neighbor, and the facade towards the main street. People that are passing by, they cannot understand that it's one house. They think that it's a lot of houses together. Actually, they don't even pay attention. If we didn't have the colors, they would just passing by. And this is the entrance that, again, it has a lot of details. It has these flowers and a very crafted handle and a lot of detail that you can touch. It's very inviting, very pleasant, very sensual space, because we think that the entrance is the first moment that you feel when you enter a house. And then you enter under this curved hall, which is again like a hug. And then you have this 11 meters void with a tree in the middle, and you can see the different rooms looking at this void. This is a sketch how we use nature in the house, using it as an interior garden. The entrance towards the garden. And this is how we use, actually, in the moment where supposedly you need to have a column, like in this corner, we don't have a column, and the whole house is hanging from above, like a church. And with this structural, let's say, intelligence, we managed to have this continuous relationship to the outside. All the corners are free in this house. The typology of the house is mainly taken from the old Athenian houses that Aris Konstantinidis, a very important architect from the 50s, has studied. Actually, you can see it here, the relationship of the interior void with the old Athenian house typology, where the footprint of the house itself was very small, and all the life was happening to the outside. Again, this house, Petralona House, promoting the social life as the other project that Konstantinos showed to you. This is the view towards the center. In the center, there is a table. In many of our projects, there is a table. And here you can see again from this corner, again, the column is missing, again, giving this continuity to the outside. This is the top floor. there is a lot of detailing, like statues or tiles inside the concrete, which is very, very rough. This is the view from the first floor room to the void. Details again, where you can see that there is a lot of symbolism, like in this moment here. And the view of the second floor, which is more, it has a totally different atmosphere, more open, more minimal. And this is the view of the house from the outside. This is a refer to Madelon, to the OMA dance theater project in The Hague, where Madelon Wiesenthorp had painted the facade. In our case, we use ancient pottery, and we created this athletes' bodies, because from this floor here you can see Acropolis, but we didn't know when we were making the house. And this is the concrete wall of this is the parking actually, which is very crafted and very sculptural with a lot of details and places for plants or soap and tiles. And the view from the garden. This is the very narrow and void, let's say, that the old shape of the house has. Two different moments of the exterior space. It's very unique that in this house there are all these kind of different atmospheres, and if you see the pictures individually, you cannot understand that this can be one house. And to have all this kind of different spatial experience for us is very important. And then the void, there is this curve that connects the two floors, and it mainly happened in order to bring light to the garden, because as we said before, the neighborhoods are very close to us. The view to the garden. And again, some details. This is the entrance, where you cannot understand where is the inside, where is the outside. Actually, this part here is outside, and this is inside, but the limits and the borders are totally broken in this house. And this is the view towards the kitchen. There are a lot of stories about this house, about the way that it was built. It was built during the financial crisis. We built it, a lot of things happened from literally by ourselves. We asked for a lot of sponsorships. We had a lot of reused materials. It was built together with our family, literally. So, and another part of the story of this house is a lot of references in architectural theory, a lot of, for example, this curved wall here is taken from Lina Bobardi. The stair behind is Le Corbusier. There is another stair by Auguste Perret. A lot of screens by Frank Lloyd Wright. But all these things, they are, even though they were designed as individual architectural entities, they are all coming together when you live there.
Yes, and because it was so exciting, and so we were so obsessed with collecting different characters, different atmospheres, different qualities, different textures, while making the house, which was following the previous work we had been doing, because as I mentioned in the Flower Shop project, most of our work was without budget. So we had to find, and it was the crisis years, so we had to invent ways to build the projects. So we discovered, for example, junkyards, which are these places where they dump pieces of buildings that have been demolished, you know, doors, windows, tiles, sinks, toilet seats, everything. We had discovered all these places already from the Flower Shop. All of our projects had pieces from other buildings. So by the time we were doing the Petralona house, which was, first of all, it was our own, and secondly, it was very important to fund it, right? So we were collecting so many things that our office had been transformed into a kind of junkyard. And all our work was starting to become cataloging and watching the differences and relationships between the different parts. Which fitted very much our architectural ambition of making spaces which were made of different parts, of different types of space. So to celebrate this or to further do something about this, we did also this project in parallel, which was called the Totems, which was a mirror project to the Petralona house. It took fragments from the different pieces of the house or the different atmospheres and made these columns, these 3 columns that roughly correspond to 3, let's say, areas of the house, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And these columns present and celebrate the relationships between the things, the fragments, also showing the same thinking and the same respect about these fragments, about these materials, whether they were expensive or cheap, found or bought, new or old, handmade or found in the market, you know, cereal, valuable or common, exceptional or not. So it was a very interesting project because it was a kind of mapping of the process of designing the house. Different details, different views, showing, for example, plugs. Also, the plug. Everything changes through the house. There's different types of things. Then we will show you this. It's the book Marianna mentioned, The Old Athenian Houses by Aris Konstantinidis. This was a topic. This was a book about something that is very important to us, the Old Athenian house. The Greek, it represents the Greek way of life, which is about outdoor space, it's about economy, it's about functionality, it's about simplicity. It's houses made by non-architects. It's a little bit a mirror situation to what I showed you with the domino. It's the previous step of the domino phase of the city. So a few years ago, we were lucky to do a project, a research project about it that we always wanted to do at EPFL in Lausanne, where we were teaching at the time. So we took this book that is very unfinished, let's say, because Aris Konstantinidis, when he did it in the 50s, he didn't have any funding. So what he did was just go and make a photograph in black and white, and then he drew one plan or maybe two plans and maybe a section. So it's a very partial representation of these houses, documentation of these houses. It's really missing information. It's full, if you notice the pictures, they're full of these things that we treasure so much in Greek culture and Greek architecture, such as spontaneity, improvisation, freedom, richness also, and poetry. You see all these things that are happening by all these non-architects, and at the same time, of course, being totally economical, and you see, it's so simple, like this house has these two rooms only. Also very unorthodox and strange typologies. You see the plants with this deep garden, for example. So what we did was, together with the students, study very carefully the existing drawings and maybe one or two pictures, and then try to recreate the whole house. So we made axonometric, like 3D models, whole axonometric drawings, but also models of these houses in great detail, trying to showcase everything that was particular or strange about these houses. Also in construction details of them, really interesting typologies. It's something we have been doing also in our own holidays and everywhere, cataloging the houses of the islands that we just randomly stay at. So this was about discovering and celebrating social life, again, and efficiency and economy in Greek living. So I'll show you very fast also two more recent residential projects that came after or at the same time with this research about the old Athenian houses, which had to do with how to introduce social life or enhance social life, common life, public space into existing houses. It was again two houses that we were asked to only renovate. In the first one, this one, Artemida house, it was 3 levels with absolutely no connection apart from a narrow little stair, and we convinced the clients to erase a fourth of the middle floor. So we made a big hole here, so suddenly you got a visual connection between all levels, and the rest of the house was built, of course, in a way like you saw in the previous apartments, trying to make an environment more than a house. This is the middle level, the parents' floor, let's call it, with a view here to the hall in the middle, or the ground floor that was completely opened up to open up the view to the sea that was previously not really enjoyed. Again, a facade that playfully and in various ways opens up. And the second project that we did something similar in an opposite way was actually not a polykatοικία in this case. It was a house in the Peloponnese that we were asked to renovate for a family with 2 children. And what we did there was divide their living room into half, like make their living room smaller, which was something that was very unconventional and really strange for them to hear at first. They couldn't understand it, but they were very smart, and we convinced them to do it, and it really worked because it created this old school type of space, which is much more intimate. This is a winter destination. It's a cold place, so it's more about living closely. So we put this divider, and there were other things happening, also inspired by traditional Greek culture and daily life, like putting a bed in the kitchen, so when the grandmother was cooking, then the kids or grandchildren were sleeping and she could have an eye on them. So it's very particular types of Greek space that we managed to introduce, while also turning the stable, the basement, into the kids' floor. So this is where the horses would normally sleep. It was not supposed to be part of the house, but it became.
Yeah.
We will
try to rush with the last project. This is I Am Vete that we did together with NPDZF, Marion Bernard and Jacques Lucan. It opened this September. Actually, we wanted to see this school having in our mind also what we did for the Marseille school. As you know, it is 3 schools. It's architecture, landscape, and urbanism. And it's in the very center of Marseille, in front of Portex. The facade of the school with this very open. It's a continuous facade, but actually here there is a void towards the center, the central open space. What is interesting is actually that we divide the program, we divide the buildings per program and not per institution. So here is administration, forum, and exhibition space. These are the Atelier that are all connected from this polykatοικία-like step-back terraces. And this is the experimentation and research space. All the design is happening by mainly designing the void and less the mass, let's say. So we have these 3 open spaces. This is the event space, the research space, and this is the pinnate. And this is the space where they are all connected together. We did a lot of collages, mainly referred to the ancient agora. This is or the forum in Pompeia, and actually that was the starting point of the project. How the buildings are connected through the open space. This is the collages we did for the competition, mainly for the event space. And this is the situation that we had when the building was inaugurated. And actually, this is how they use it as well. There is a lot of animation, a lot of things are happening in this space. But what is interesting here is that you have a very narrow entrance to the building, and then you have this, let's say, fake, it's not a fake, but it's a facade that it's actually open. And you have this connection always with the city, always with what is outside, in this case with this arc outside. Again, there is this connection to the old Athenian houses. We were part of the team as the Mediterranean experts. And of course, when you do collaborations, you have to compromise. We use more colors, but this building, it has more concrete, more robust architecture. But for us, it doesn't matter, because what we wanted to achieve in this school was to have this very intense social life and this life outside. And we think that it was achieved. We had a very nice collaboration with other architects. And you can see it's very animated. A lot of things are happening in many corners, and there are exceptions in the stairs. There is the circular stair, the open one, the closed ones. Exceptions in the floors. And another thing is that we try to have a different kind of section. You can see here that the balcony is narrow, while here the balcony is very wide. Always creating this kind of variety in spatial experience. And because the building is very long and things are happening always outside, when you are there, you can. It's like a movie, very cinematographic. You look here, but then there is something happening there, or something down or on the terrace. And because all the life is outside, it's very vivid building. The entrance from the other street, this is the research canopy, let's say, where the students can build big things like you do here. The view from the balcony again of the Atelier. There are all these interesting moments, and this is the interior, very simple, very. And this is a project that we did with 51N40 from Belgium. That actually it was also inaugurated last November. Again, all the attention was given again to the social life, and first we designed the open spaces and then the buildings themselves. So this is a space for exhibition, atelier, and workshop, and it's in Genk city, a very industrial city. This is the collage that we did for the competition. So there is this wall, the red wall, that defines the main space, which is a garden, while in front there is a more urban, more public square, and its building has its own, let's say, architectural identity. And you can see here behind the connection of with the context. People can cross this agglomeration daily. And this is the view of the exhibition space, again with some details outside. This is the cafeteria, and actually it's a moment where people are using it very often. And all these projects that were presented in May last year in A+U, that it was an issue dedicated to our work. The last project of A+U is called Boats in the Stars. Boats in the Stars, and it's a project that we did in Syros Island for the closing event of cinema festival. And for us, it's an important project because it has a very urban effect, but using a very simple and very ready-made, a very archetypical element and a traditional element, which is a boat. The boats, the traditional boats in Syros and in Greece are disappearing now. And fishermen boats, yes. And we created a parade together with the fishermen of Syros Island from the space where these boats are to the pier where the closing event was, only by using flags, ornamenting and highlighting the shape of the boat and lights. And it was a very, very intense moment with this very few elements, because all the people came out and they were looking what was happening, and there was this celebration, and the city was activated with this very simple gesture. And the boats, they were going around and they were dancing and they were doing all these movements, and it was very, very nice, very intense, very Fellini-like moment, like a lot of people mentioned.
And to close, another project about Athens, a final project about Athens. We showed it in the beginning of the lecture. It's called How Will We Live Together, Athens. It was a tribute to this painter that did the mountains painting that we showed you also in the beginning. It was made for the Venice Biennale, and it's basically a portrait of Athens, but showing the city not as something, not as a place made of buildings, of architecture, but more made of elements, made of objects, made of things that are closer to the human scale and are related more directly with human scale, such as doors, entryways, windows, balconies, statues, floors, stairs, all these often handmade things that Athens is full of, and that give a particular character and scale to the city that's very close to the human scale, to people and social life. This is the painting that it was based on. And some details. That's it. Thank you.
This generous project.
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation. You showed us a lot of artwork and drawings and collage, and I wanted to know a bit more about what is your design process. How do you use art to create architecture? Is it more like doing art first and then architecture, or is it more going back and forth? And also, another question, you seem to have a lot of color in your architecture. It's very playful. And what are your inspiration, and what is the relationship you have with color? Thank you.
Yeah, it's of course it's a very good question. Thank you for this. The first question was about the process of design, and you were right. We showed a lot of images, I think, a lot of image-based slides. It's funny because, of course, representation and images is, I think, a big part of our work, and it's a big part of what we show of our work. But actually, I think, we think our work is much more calculated and, banal, let's say, in its process than what is maybe communicated or understood. Marianna mentioned a little bit about this when she was showing the urban projects we did, where, if you remember, if you noticed, she was mentioning that a lot of the projects were based on calculations. She was showing one example of calculations of what the amount of missing green in the city of Athens is. So what happens is, in the first phase projects, in the urban projects, there was a lot of calculation, a lot of research actually behind. Also Athens by hills, it was involving a tremendous cataloging and mapping of the hills of Athens and what the programs are there. We've done the same with the Athens coast. It's things that are a little bit, I don't want to say boring, but it's not, we think it's not the point to show them too much, because we want to keep the essence, which I guess we imagine that is best considered through representation, so more through images. So what I think is very important in our work to us is the fact that these images are all based on research and mathematics. It's the same with the second period projects or the built projects, which are much more defined in drawings, in plans, in calculations, in diagrams, in testing alternatives, and much less about what they look like, what they feel like, how they're represented. It's just that we don't show so much the research part or the study part.
Yeah, but we didn't answer about the art.
Yes, I thought you wanted to say something.
Okay. I think that, first of all, because we work differently with Konstantinos, I'm more mathematical and more plan-like organized. And Konstantinos is very visual. So when we start working, we work in two different, let's say, ways. There is a moment that these things are coming together, but for example, we have a very strong library, very well organized with the things that inspire us, our references, and it's very rarely to finish a project without having the image that we feel that it summarizes or really inspires us about a project. So art is coming almost together, or almost together with the plans at the same time. And the way we use color mostly comes of what we find in the place. For example, the basement apartment, that it's all red. We wanted to keep this cave-like feeling. And then we look a lot for leftover materials. So the way that the fact that we want to have this warmness lead us to have this kind of reddish materials. And then the building that Konstantinos showed you on the roof terrace, the idea was to have this underwater atmosphere. So it has blue colors, but with coral-like exceptions, because it is on the sky, so it has this connection to blue. But in other projects, like for example, Nadia, or where the floor is blue, and on the first floor is blue and the second is earth-like, comes out of the contrast that we wanted to show you. So actually everything is very contextual. That's what I wanted to say. Or Petralona house. Petralona is super contextual in every little detail, even the plugs. The ground floor is green because it's connected to the garden. The first floor is blue and white because it's island-like, very dense, very small. And then the upper floor is sunset-like. So, yes. I don't know if we answer you to
I want to add something that I think maybe is interesting for you to know. I think that the way we use art or the way we use color is very much strategic. It's really more about enhancing a strategy that is created in the plan, or in the drawings, or in the calculations, or the conclusions of the research that we have made. Because otherwise I don't know how to use art. I don't know how we could use art or color. Sometimes people ask us, how do you decide the colors? And it's really always, there's a story that comes from a plan or a section. For example, the rooftop apartment that was like underwater, it was because it was on a roof and we were very much afraid of the heat up on that roof in the center of Athens. So we tried to make it feel fresh. So the color strategy really followed that assumption. I think that's important to think about.
Yes, it's a very interesting process, and for us it's very fascinating every time we start a project where that will lead. But at the same time, the fact that every time we reinvent the materials and we reinvent the colors, it takes a lot of it needs a lot of I don't know
Work.
Work, yes.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Process. It's we have to admit.
Especially this small apartment, it was really a lot of work to you know. It's like embroidering, like you know. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, yes. Somebody wants to say something. But sometimes I'm thinking, because a lot of times, for example, we get applications from students or young architects that want to come to work with us, and we get applications, portfolios that are totally artistic. And as soon as we see portfolios like this, we just close them. And sometimes we reply to people and we try to explain to people that it's not about art. We're not at all about art. We don't consider ourselves artistic at all. We're not interested in that. We're really much more interested in the dry logic and story in a project. And I think this is something we should really do. I think it would be interesting to try to show our work without images. And I think you would discover very interesting things, because I pressed the button. If there's something I'm very fond of in our work, or something that I think is important in our work, it's really not the images, it's the plans. which we never show. But if you are attentive, if you look at the images, you understand, I think you appreciate that it's not very common, it's not very simple, it's not very obvious what is happening. If you see the images, I think a trained architect or somebody more suspicious can understand the peculiarities of the plan. Please, yes.
Thank you. It was so interesting, all the things that you said on presentation. Just in the end, so you said that you don't consider yourself as an artist, yeah?
Yes, maybe I should
like in architecture, there is no art? It's impossible, yeah?
Sorry, yes?
Okay.
What was it? Can you say it a bit louder?
Just in the end, you said that you don't consider yourself as an artist. I hear that clearly. Okay, it was strange for me because
maybe yes.
Yeah. So anyway, my question was about that. If I understand it well, like you guys from Athens, yeah. So in 2008, the agence was there. It's still there. Like
what was there
in 2000? In Athens. The city.
The office, yes. We started in 2008 in Athens, yes.
In Athens, and it's still working in Greek.
Yes, yes, we're in Greece.
And do you do any international project too?
Intervention projects?
International.
International, yes, of course. Like the ones we showed you, like this one is in Belgium and the architecture school in Marseille.
Yeah, okay. So, and I mean, my question was like the freedom that I see in your works, that I have this feeling that it came from the spirit of Greek, or in the conception that in the beginning you start talking about it. And the project that you show in the first part, like with the garden and all the conception and inspiration that in the end we saw in the city, and all the, like the effect that it had in the other works of your agency, you art and artist people, I don't know. So it's like in the beginning they were not realized, if I understood well, like none of the image of the paysage and all this thing, it was just a competition, yeah. And but nowadays that these are more like in the type of realistic and not. My question is about like having this. How in the agence you work with a lot of nowadays is still going to competition without money, like doing job for no money, like you said about this, or just these days is more realistic because you pass like the 10 first year of your agence. I don't know how to explain it better. And like when you said there no money, it's not really no money, but the budget came from the client, like from the person that you built for. And it's another way of looking the subject.
There's a few things. First of all, indeed, much of the urban projects were not realized. Actually, some things were realized. We didn't show them today. But as like the Six Dogs Garden or Serpentina, a canopy, the shade in Tel Aviv. What we mentioned very briefly at some point is that we discovered much later that all the ideas of the urban projects actually formulated the built projects that came later. So it was a subconscious situation that happened to us. At the moment, we have less time to do self-commissioned projects, although we have a list of ideas of things we want to do for Athens projects. Of course, we cannot afford to do it anymore. We couldn't go on doing it forever. Now we have also some commissioned work, so also we don't have time. But the solution we invented was to do it, to continue the research projects and the self-commissioned projects through our teaching. That's an example is the Athens houses project we showed you that we did in EPFL, but we've done a lot more. We've done the coast at Columbia in New York, Greek islands in Columbia in New York, and many other research projects that we do with students. So it's not the same, of course, but it's something pretty close. Then about international projects, we totally are also interested in doing international projects because it's the only chance we get to do bigger things in public programs. Because in Greece there's no competitions, there's no architecture for public programs, and we're mostly interested in that. If we could choose, I don't think we would ever have done any private houses. So the only chance is by doing international competitions, and we've been lucky enough to have won some prizes and have built some. What else?
I wanted to say that indeed lately we have bigger projects, and we cannot have the detail that all the interior projects have. We had a period in our office last year where we thought that maybe we can do simpler things. It didn't work. I mean, it's the result of the project that we produced last year. They are not satisfactory to us. But what I wanted to say is that through the big projects, we cannot have the detail, that's for sure. But what we are trying to do and prioritize is the social space that we mentioned before. We want to give something to the city. We want to give something to the people. For now, for example, we design a hotel in the center of Athens now. But actually, what this hotel does is that it creates a public park to the city. It gives back to the city a park. For us, this is very important. So we have the big projects where we try to have the social and public space, and then the small ones, the interiors, where we try to have this detail. And in some cases, we try to find the detail in the big project that we have, more detail, more colorful, more exception.
Kalimera. Good evening. We went to Athens like a month ago with the school. I do like the way how you work with the texture on the floor, especially in all your little projects. But I'm more interested in the way how you talk about the city. For me, for example, Dominoes is a game. For my kid, it's a piece that you can make things. What's your vision about Athens like a city of dominoes?
Wait, when we said Dominoes, I should have mentioned, I meant the domino of Le Corbusier, the Maison Domino, right? So it's just the structure of, like architecture as infrastructure, plates and columns, not the toy domino. Can you hear me? Yes. Did you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the way how you see these dominoes, because you have a vision also, I think, your own interpretation about what's meant a city of dominoes.
So you're asking us to elaborate a little bit more about how we see Athens as a domino city.
Yeah, you talk about layers.
Yes.
Sorry.
For me, there's a lot of things to say about that, but the most important aspect is the fact that, to me, the Maison Domino is a system, right? It's a frame, and then there's no form, there's no result, it's not finished. The inhabitant will go and fill it, the space, on their own. So Athens is a little bit like that, and the result is this first picture we showed, which is a kind of formless. It's a kind of lack of architecture in a way. It's just an infrastructure. So it's also what we tried to show in this sketch we had, where it was just a surface of little lines and then these interiors. Because our work, most of our work was interventions inside already existing domino systems, Maison Dominos, polykatikias. We saw our work, we saw our space, the spaces we were doing as little exceptions of color or density or identity, maybe that's more important, into this totally universal layer of columns and plates, concrete. So in a sea of no form, we saw our projects as little exceptions of form, and I think that's really something you feel if you visit one of our apartments. Or projects, you open a door, you arrive from somewhere, you arrive from the city, so you walk in the Greek pavements, you take an elevator in a domino building, you open the door, you're in a corridor, it's always this same formless experience, and then you open a door and you're surrounded by something, an identity, a spatial identity. That's, I think, what was more critical, at least to me, about the relation of the domino systems and the architecture we made. It was very important to have these identities.
For us, it becomes clearer and clearer that our work is totally related to the city of Athens. And I don't know, the domino system, the balconies, whatever is happening in this city, we try to work with formless, more archetypical. Nothing is very, has an exceptional form in our architecture. And we work mainly by designing the relationship of the things and less the form. And I think this is something that is taken from the city of Athens, because Athens is very neutral in a way, and everything is happening from the details and what people are doing. And for us, the architecture in Athens is just a frame and the background. So it's very, very simple, and actually you keep seeing things happening one behind the other, and this is where this framing, the screens that we are using came from. And I think also the density of the city of Athens is also part of our work in a way, because I don't know if we were in Nantes or I don't know where, if we would do this kind of architecture, but for us, especially the interiors that we do, they reflect the city where we live and we are inspired from.
I have a small question. In the very beginning, you talked about the fragments that are attached to the original frames of the homes in Athens, and you described them as results of spontaneous ingenuity. And so I'm asking, how do these quote-unquote mistakes inspire you to follow unconventional measures in architecture? Like, how unconventional do you think architecture should be at the end of the day?
Wow, very interesting question.
It's not about being unconventional. I think that it's about how sometimes functionality on things that are happening, like we were noticing this kind of column there in the mezzanine of the amphitheater, that actually it's a mistake, eh? But for us, this kind of things are very interesting because it came out of the functionality of what you needed. So for us, it's not about being unconventional, but about how you can use what you need and what you find in a way. I don't know, I think it's very abstract.
Sorry, I know what you mean, but I think, and I said that unconventional term. I'm very interested also literally in the unconventional and the mistake. And I think what it means, I think, in our work is the fact that we try to forget our education as architects, forget about rules. So to us it happened a little bit accidentally because, as I mentioned, we were doing, before we started our office, we were working in gigantic projects, very ambitious. And in fact, we have also been trained as urban planners. I did postgraduate studies in urban planning. Marianna did postgraduate studies in furniture, object design in Eindhoven. So the whole idea of scale, and I did urbanism by accident. I didn't realize I was registered in an urbanism school. And I only found out 3 years later at my graduation, where somebody announced me as an urban planner. So I did 3 years of studying of urbanism, but thinking of it in terms of architecture, and I was always wondering why all my classmates were either urbanists or never really designing anything. Anyway, so then when we started our office, we were asked, so imagine us, after doing big projects in Moscow, Dubai, Seoul, wherever, going back to Greece and being asked to do a small flower shop. Interior even. So what all this means is that already the whole idea of scale was completely disregarded because we didn't know how to do an interior. We had never done an interior actually ever, or a furniture. So imagine, we had to actually start from zero. We were like people untrained. So we were very close to the improvisation of Greek culture, which has mistakes. We were very close to that. We didn't know the rules to do an interior or a furniture. So, but also by noticing all these strange situations that I showed with the stair hanging and the steps and the door crashing, it's very typical. You see this everywhere in Greece. Because as I said, architecture is made by non-architects. So everybody just invents solutions. And it's fantastic. And if you go to Greek islands, it's the same. If you look at Greek rules, a stair has to have a landing, right? If you go to a Greek island, there's no landings. You just step up to the last step and then figure a way to turn and step somewhere. And there's always something to step on, a stone perhaps. And there's no handrails on Greek islands. It's completely unconventional and completely wrong. I mean, it's funny to talk about this because here there's also a lack of rules in many things. But I think that's very important to have a certain liberation. But as Marianna says, it's not about fetish. It's really about serving function. That's the interesting thing about it. And if there's a beauty, or if there's a poetry, if there's something interesting coming out of it, that's secondary. It should really serve a purpose. The way the reason it happens in Greece, and the way it happens in Greece, it's always ergonomic. It's never about something else. It's never about beauty, aesthetics, concept, imagine. It's never about that. It's because that's the material they had on the island. It's only that stone they can use. They don't have space. The toilet, it's outside. You have to cross, you go under a tree in the rain to get to the toilet. All these things are totally normal.
It's very interesting when when students or new architects are coming to our office. It's a bit for them. It's very difficult at the beginning to work with us because, for example, we are totally against alignments. This is something with alignment.
Alignment,
to align things or to align. I don't know how to
in
explain
Greek architecture, it's the first thing students say. They say, "My concept is to have to align these two things."
Yeah, so it's something that we don't allow to have it, let's say.
Always using
but
the hands
what we do align is a relationship. And I wanted to show you this slide because it's very interesting. We designed this door here, the gate. So this gate is a collage of many things, of a door that we found in an island, of the flags that we use for parties, and of a Frank Lloyd screen. So this is a collage by itself. But I wanted to say that when we sent this to my father that did this door, so we said, okay, we will divide this by 5 and we will divide this by 15. Finito. And he called us and he said, "Hey, Marianna, you did a mistake. You know, the upper part, it's not aligned to the part underneath. And then the voids, the square voids, they are not aligned to the lines." My father, who is not an architect, he's a farmer. And I said, "No, Dad, you're going to do it how we send it to you. Just divide it." But if you notice in this image, what we did align is we aligned the door, the garage door, with the rest of the facade. And that was the only rule that we gave.
So by conventional standards, we often do mistakes, even on purpose. It's a bit what I said about the use of color also. It's about being strategic. It's about using alignments, if there's any, or geometry, let's put it that way, not to serve, an intellectual rule that things have to be like this, but to serve attention, to serve program, to serve hierarchy.
Good evening. As architects that have actually lived abroad and on a foreign land, how did your journey geographically and professionally contribute to your philosophical or your architectural philosophy? You've also mentioned this awakening, this the realization of Athens' potential. What made it happen, and how did your journey shape your understanding of urban potential?
Yes, this is very important, I think, to our office. It was radically changing everything, our journeys. But first of all, I should mention that we are not from Athens. That's also something. That's a starting point. So we come from different places in Greece. I'm from Patras, a port city next to the sea. Marianna is from a village next to Delphi. So we went to Athens to study architecture. So first thing is that we're externals to Athens. At first, Athens was a very complex thing to us. We were studying architecture. Eventually we started to be obsessive about it in our diploma projects. We did a lot of work while students about the city already. But we were Greek, so we were living in Greece, so we were totally ignoring and not paying attention to what was Greek and Greekness. we were really observing what was happening abroad, because that was interesting to us. That was different. We were looking at the Dutch, the Super Dutch at the time, in fact. That's why the first travels we did was in Holland. We did Erasmus, etc. Then we started to travel to just experience different cultures and to work there. We went to Japan and worked. We went to Belgium, England, Holland. So what happened then was a totally different new thing, which is that we started for the first time, we were, by being immersed in different cultures, we started to see Greece altogether from outside. So Japan, we picked Japan because we were always very much interested, fascinated by Japan, because we saw Japan as a mirror country, as a similar country to Greece, because of its very strong tradition and kind of uniqueness, let's say, particularities. So we went to Japan, and there I think it was the moment where we started to realize and appreciate all the ceremonial aspect of Greek life. Rituals, the rituals of Greek life, because Japan has them also, but in a different form, a different way. So we started to get that from there. And then when we went to Holland, where we went because of the Dutch architecture, we started to realize something else which became more important, which was the importance of history and topography in our culture, because the Dutch is flat and without history, right? It's a construction. Greece is the opposite. Dutch has incredible architecture. It had incredible architecture at the time, full of concept. It was conceptual, right? Nothing else. No history, no context, just concept. Which made us look at Athens as a place without concept, but with incredible context and history and culture, everything else that Holland was not. That's where the first ideas about urban projects were born. Like Athens by Hills was a project born completely from Holland, because Holland didn't have any hills. So it was the first, after living years in Holland, we started to miss the hills, which was something that would never happen to somebody being in Greece and how to say, surrounded by topography. Hills are everywhere in Greece. That's where we realized all these things. So that's indeed where all our thinking was completely transformed abroad. And it was many things. It was the combination of countries we picked. It was the combination of our characters, which are all also complementary, so very different. So Marianna was realizing other things. I was realizing other things. And the combination of all of that became the office.
Thank you. Have you or could you do design collective housing? Have you? And by my question, I mean, you work a lot with the unicity and at the same time with frame. So the Domino's housing is a frame, but it allows for a lot of unicity inside it. So have you...
Uniqueness, you mean, or particularity?
No,
or
uniqueness.
Uniqueness, yes. Uniqueness.
So have you... And could you design collective housing?
Social housing, you are asking? Yeah. Yes, collective housing, yes. We're dying to do a collective housing project. We haven't, have we? Well, we've done housing.
Only for the European.
We've done a European that we won, actually, and we've done a lot of housing, but not particularly social housing, so specifically affordable housing. But it's one of the programs that we're totally fascinated about, because as you are hitting at, I think there's a lot of ideas in it, like the combination of system and uniqueness that I think is a very interesting study, case study to test.
In Greece, it's very limited what an architect can do. It's either private houses, like mostly villas, and then it's interiors, and now it's hotels. There is no public programs, there is no public competitions. All the competitions are private, and actually they can be public, but there is a private sponsorship, sponsor that chooses the teams that are gonna compete. So it's a very hardcore environment and quite Okay, very limited, and in the programs that and the functions that we can design in Greece. That's why we're very excited that the hotel we are designing also gives a public space, and that's why also we collaborate with the architects abroad to fulfill this. Social housing would be a dream of ours to design, because it has this intimacy and social life that we are interested in.
Thank you for the questions also.